can't get into Harvard. Harvard doesn't even have my program, and I'm stupid. I don't have any apparel from the actual school that I'm going to because now I have student loans to pay off and can't drop $50 on Champion apparel. That's what I'm going with. So what's up, internet? The last time I sat on my bed right here and made a video about this topic, I was like on the verge of a mental breakdown because I didn't know if I was going to get into grad school. I didn't know what my life was going to turn out like if I didn't, what I was going to do as a job, what the future held. But in April of this year, I was accepted to the speech language pathology program at Boston University. It like gives me chills to say that. Oh my god, like I feel like Elwoods, but it's something that I knew for a while I wanted to happen and was even afraid of thinking it because I was so scared that it wasn't, and it is a dream come true. Woo! Which is cool. So shout out to any speech pathology majors who might be watching this. Grad school is not only stressful, and I haven't experienced that firsthand yet, but the application process was just, it was next level. I'm trying to think of a way to describe it. Like, it literally feels like you're in the middle of the desert because you have no thing to cling to, like, oh yes, this is what is going to happen with my future career, and you feel depleted and you have to tell everybody how great you are when you've been like without water for 7 days. It is hard, it's difficult. So the purpose of me making this video is not only to talk about my new grad program, but also just talk about how I got into school, because with speech pathology, I'm gonna try to be nice when I say this, everyone is super duper type A almost, and you'll see that also with like med school and things like that, but I just want to give an example that you can be a type B kind of personality, type B being more relaxed instead of type A more retentive. But yeah, I just want to show an example that even if you're not on top of everything, you can still succeed in something like a speech grad program or a physical therapy or occupational therapy grad program, maybe too. This is my story, these are my tips, let's get into this. I came into school as a communication disorders major. I never switched my major. It was something that I knew I was interested in, and eventually it became clear that speech pathology was the career path for me, which I had a lot of doubts about as I began the grad school application process in my senior year. But before I even started applying for grad school, I had it in mind that I wanted to do this 2-year program to become a speech pathologist from my first intro class. And in my intro class, they introduced the kind of professions that you can go into with the communication disorders undergrad. So it was clear to me that speech was the path that I wanted to take, and eventually I realized that that meant having to take GREs and having to apply to programs and having to go to another school, you know, having to get my master's, and that didn't scare me at the time. So the very first thing that I ever did was I toured my top program. And I wasn't completely certain that it was my top program at the time. For some reason, that was the only school that I did go on to do a tour for. They held tours in both September and like the April-May kind of time period, and I decided to do it in May after I finished my junior year. And it's pretty close to my school now. I went to Emerson for my undergrad, if I didn't mention that. So I just got on the subway and I went and toured the program. I met the head of the program there and got a tour from one of the current students, and that's when I began to set my sights on a top program, which isn't that way for everyone, but I'm kind of like a goal-oriented person almost. I need to work towards a certain thing, which can kind of bite me in the butt sometimes, but like if I'm not working towards a certain thing, then I'm not as motivated to achieve it. So I set very early on what my top program was, and then I began studying for the GREs. That was even before I toured, because I got a GRE book for Christmas. This is the GRE book that I used. It is something that I got off of Amazon. It's a thick book. It's absolutely covered in chlorine, pool chemicals of all types, and coffee, because I used it to study when I was working at a pool and at a coffee shop, so it's absolutely disgusting. It's falling apart. And it has a bunch of sections and practice type of questions and practice vocabulary words and things like that, and then in the back are 2 practice tests, which I like sort of did. But also taking a written practice test for the GRE is kind of pointless because it's on a computer. So this was the review book that I used, and I studied from May until October because I was really feeling like I wasn't prepared, and that everything that I was doing with this book, like I still didn't feel prepared. I felt like I could study for years and hours on end. But I eventually met up with a friend who's in a program now, and she was like, oh, what are you doing? Like, you need to register, you need to take the test. I took the test for my first time in October, and you get preliminary scores at the end of that, and I was not happy with them at all. At first I didn't really understand how the scoring works, so I was like, oh, this couldn't be that bad, right? And then I like went and looked at the average scores for my top program and other programs that I was applying to, and I was like, oh god. I decided to take it a second time, and the second time around when I was studying, I made sure to focus on the math because that's really a weakness for me, and I also used Kaplan and Magoosh and started doing some practice online questions because I became more familiar with the format of the test. Obviously the written one wasn't what I was sitting down to do. I didn't do any practice essays, which is so bizarre because I scored the best on the essays just by going on about, I think it was frogs for paragraphs at a time, and then I go in, do the jury, get the same exact score. At that point I thought I was totally screwed, and it hits your self-esteem pretty bad, which is difficult because you have to then write these personal statements to tell schools how incredible of a human being, not even a human being, both a student and just an all-around person you are when you've taken these tests and you feel like crap because you think that you're stupid. Personal statements I did start in the summer, but I started them in the summer. I wrote them and was like, I don't know how I feel about this. I was never very like structured with the way that I was studying or writing things. With my personal statements, something that I did that they don't recommend that you do is that I wrote a big one, like a master one, for my top school, and then I tailored all the other ones to that first one that I wrote, which everyone tells you not to do, but I did it. Like there was a paragraph about research, and then the closing paragraph, which I tailored to the specific school, obviously, because every school has different research. So that's how I went about doing my personal statements, and I submit everything. I thought everything was good. I got 2 letters of rec from teachers of 400 classes, so like the highest class I had ever had, and then also a clinical supervisor that I had had from a volunteer position because I felt like that was my strength, whereas test taking was not. I was like, I can work with children, please, like let the schools know that I can work with kids, I'm capable. So that's why I chose her, the supervisor, to write about my clinical skills. And I thought everything was good, I thought everything was set, and then I had this horrible issue with my transcripts, which I won't get into too much because it's too soon. It was 6 months ago, but it was just absolutely awful because I just had a technical error where I thought that I had requested the transcripts in an appropriate way, but I didn't. They need to be sent to SIDCAS, which is like the common app for speech pathology applications, and I don't know what I ended up doing, but they didn't get sent to SIDCAS, and they basically need to be sent to their offices, which are in the same state that I currently am in right now, a month before the due date of the application. So my first application was due January 1st. I needed to send in those transcripts December 1st, and I didn't realize that that hadn't happened until like December 15th. Maybe even later than that. And then I thought that I had fixed the problem, and I didn't end up fixing it, and was on the phone with SIDCAS, literally in tears, which is just embarrassing, but the way that they talked to me, they had definitely heard it before. That's when I contacted all the heads of my programs specifically. Well, it wasn't all the heads, it was just the program directors for the 2 schools that had January 1st deadlines. And those 2 schools were Boston University and Mass General Hospital Institute of Health Professions. That's a tongue twister. MGH-IHP. I sent it right to the head of the program in both instances, and I got 2 very different reactions. MGH is number 7 in the country, like ranked. So I was kind of expecting them to not really be pleased with me. It was still hard to hear, but then at the same time, the school that I really did want to go to understood and worked with me. It wasn't the director, but she kind of forwarded my emails to the like graduate coordinator, and she really worked through everything with me and kind of helped me along the way, and I sent her a lot of emails and just kind of had updates. And I think that what really stood out about my email to BU is that I made it really, really clear to them how badly I wanted to go there, which I never had thought of doing before. Just being that vulnerable with people in a professional setting. In the past, I would have felt weird like being that true and really telling them how badly I wanted to go there, but it ended up working out in my favor. I got an email from BU that I had got an interview, which when I got that email, I thought that I was done. You know what I mean? I thought that the transcript issue was like the nail in the coffin, and the dead body inside was my horrible GRE scores. I wasn't expecting it at all. And at the time, I was volunteering abroad. I was in Tanzania, which is a 8-hour time difference. So I guess it must have been the morning, because I remember I got that email at night. And I cried. It was crazy. I applied to 4 schools in total. So BU was my top, MGH was my second, Emerson, which was my undergrad, was my third, and then Northeastern was last. Those are based on my own personal preferences and how I felt I fit with each school. And then shortly after that, I was notified that I had been accepted to Northeastern, which crazy because, okay, here's the kicker. Northeastern very plainly laid out the GRE cutoffs that they had, which not a lot of schools do. And I didn't make those cutoffs, so I wasn't even going to apply at first. And I think it was my mom that was like, just do it anyway, you never know. And I got in. I got in like a pretty early wave, because the way that Northeastern does it is that they do waves of acceptances and then kind of like work with people who turn it down or say yes or get waitlisted and things like that. And I was accepted in February with really bad GREs. Basically, don't stress yourself out about the GRE is the point I'm trying to get at. I know I just suggested all these study materials because it's hard not to get stressed out about it, but it's not going to be a deal breaker when you're applying to grad programs for speech in particular, at least based on my own experience. So I got an acceptance, and then I had not only my BU interview, but was also notified that I got an interview at Emerson, which was cool because I thought that Emerson hated me, because while I was there, they offered me like an early interview process that I turned down because I wanted to focus on all of my applications equally, and I really thought that they were just like, this girl, like, you didn't apply early, so we're not gonna accept you. But they gave me an interview, and I had to do a Skype interview, and I also had to do it early in the morning USA time. Worked out that way because like 9 a.m. was 4 or 5 p.m. where I was at the time, which they're very used to. They say that they don't prefer it, but they are definitely prepared to do a Skype interview because there are people from all over the world and all different kinds of circumstances who are interviewing for these positions in the schools. There was one night that I went onto a website called Grad Cafe and was on there until like 2:30 in the morning, which I never did because I was living with a host family and everybody went to bed at 10 and I had a roommate and we were all on like a set schedule. But this one night I went on Grad Cafe, and while I will say it did kind of prepare me for the kind of questions that I might get, it also scared the crap out of me. And it's just the kind of situation where it's a comparison game, and that can really, really, really mess with your head. So people say to stay off Grad Cafe. I do think that some of the discussions about interviews were great, but I would stay off the kind of forums that say like, here's where I got into, here are my stats applying to this school, like, oh my god, I'm so bad guys, I have a 4.2, like I'm never gonna get accepted to Iowa. You don't need it, even if you feel like you do. Be cautious with Grad Cafe. Be cautious with Grad Cafe. If you don't know what it is, I'm gonna link it in the bio and you can see for yourself. And I remember I was working with a girl at the time, another American, who was interviewing in the same way. We were working in the same center for special needs kids, and she had some interview tips, and the best tip that she gave me was like, be prepared when they ask you what you do for fun, because I was never expecting that question to be brought up, but be prepared for when they ask you what you do for fun, and do not say studying, because they want well-rounded people even though they're going to work you to the ground, but they don't want you to have like a mental breakdown. So I was all set for my interview. I remember I was like looking at certain professors and like research coordinators' names and making sure I could pronounce them right, and like wrote things down and had a notebook and like had questions that I was ready to ask. And BU was my first interview at 8 a.m. that morning, 8 a.m. America time. It was like 4 o'clock in Tanzania. I go to a place with stable Wi-Fi where my internship coordinators work, and they had got me all set up, and there was a Wi-Fi outage. the Wi-Fi just, it totally conked out, and we were trying to connect on this Skype interview with BU, the school I wanted to go to, and it didn't happen, and they were like, we just need to reschedule. And again, I thought I was done, but I also accepted that there was nothing at that point that I could do to change it. I rescheduled that interview, and then Emerson, I think, was an hour and a half later, and I was trying to figure out the Wi-Fi, I was trying to figure out how to fix things, and I was trying to get the data from my phone onto my computer, because that's how I did a lot of work, like at the clinic where there wasn't Wi-Fi, and I thought that it would work, and then like 15 minutes beforehand, the Wi-Fi just totally conks out again, and it's not working. I was just like praying out loud. This isn't a tip. You can, whatever religion is fine with me. I've never prayed out loud like that before, but just like freaking out, praying out loud, because my interview was 15 minutes away and the Wi-Fi just wasn't working. And I remember I downloaded Skype onto my phone as quickly as I could. My phone was also dying, and so I had it plugged in. Literally the second I downloaded Skype, I get the call from Emerson, my interview call, and it's these two professors that I know, and they say to me, "Oh, Savannah, you're not on campus this semester?" And I was like, no. My Emerson interview was a great experience because when I did eventually have my rescheduled BU interview, the first thing that they said to me was their thoughts on my application. Again, I think that school is just a good fit for me. Like, that is something that I like, and I won't go into the interview questions because you're not supposed to do that. Be prepared for when they ask you what you do for fun, but also don't think that they're going to ask you about like the anatomical properties of the larynx, give you like a list of symptoms and being like, diagnose this patient. At least for these programs, they're more so asking about your general knowledge of the field and your general ideas of what you wanted to see from the field and things kind of like that. Who you are as a person working with people and working in a situation like speech. So yeah, I think that it worked out perfectly because the Emerson interview was a warm-up almost for this BU interview, which I was very nervous for, but I managed to get all the points out even if they were a little jumbled. And that's kind of when work was picking up a little bit, and I had already gotten that acceptance to Northeastern, so I just let it out of my mind and I didn't make myself sick over it the way that I had in December. Well, here's my Northeastern letter. I got these all in emails because I was not at my residency at the time. They sent it to my apartment. This also, it just asked me to check a portal. And I was like, oh great, my Northeastern rejection. Good to get it out early. But I got accepted there. That was exciting. This little folder that they gave to me, an orientation that shows the BU campus. I think that this was actually mailed together with my little acceptance letter. And when I got that acceptance, I didn't cry the way that I did with my interview, weirdly, but I remember I was shaking, and it was a crazy feeling. Seriously, if I could do it, I truly believe that anyone who is passionate about the subject that they want to get their master's in can. It's that cheesy quote about going fearlessly in pursuit of the things that set your soul on fire. But yeah, I think that that was really what got me into the school that I wanted to go to, is I just showed them how much I love the topic. It didn't matter about my grades, didn't matter about my transcript. I mean, those things are what's going to get you an interview. But at the same time, I felt like I was very much myself in my personal statement too. The emails that I had to send out, yeah, I can't say be yourself enough, but even when it's something academic and you think that you are seen as a GPA and a GRE score, you're really not. Just trust that something that is in your life and something that you want to study and are pursuing is there for a reason. I think that with a lot of medical type professions, it's a calling, and I'm such a cornball. This is my calling. Hopefully I don't drop out of school and totally regret what I'm saying, but good luck to anyone who might be starting grad school soon. In the application process, feel free to let me know if you're a speech major or what your experience was like applying to grad schools in a different field of study. Did you know that there are speech pathology memes? There are speech pathology memes. And I saw this meme the other day where it was like a baby Harry Potter and then Harry Potter in the 7th movie, and it was like me before and after grad school. I'm currently baby Harry. I don't even know what to expect or what I'm getting myself into, but I'm excited.
I wanna sleep next to you, but that's all I